Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, the date was Easter Sunday, which was April 5th, 2015. That's when we start. That day, Victoria Cilliers was doing something she had done time and time again when she visited an airfield in Salisbury Stake, UK. She was there with her husband Emil and their 2 young children. That parachute dive she'd done thousands of times at this point, did not go well for Vicky. She did not know that her parachute was broken when she jumped out of an airplane at 3,000 feet, hurtling towards the ground. Somebody had finagled her parachute. And this was not the first time somebody had tried to do something to our Vicky. Let's give it a go. Victoria was an experienced skydiver and kind of an all-round pretty impressive human being. Fair play to you. Victoria worked for the Ministry of Defence in Britain as a physiotherapist. Vicky was an AFF instructor. That stands for Accelerated Free Fall Instructor. That means she was trained to correct people, who are doing skydives, and if they have a malfunction or a problem, she'd be kind of like keeping an eye on everybody and be able to go over, oh, help me out there, while falling through the air. Very high speeds. She'd be able to catch people in midair. Basically, she was shit hot at jumping out of planes. By 2015, Vicky Cilliers had more than 2,500 successful skydive attempts. Though, I mean, I suppose if you're gonna have an unsuccessful skydive attempt, you probably just have one. In each of those over 2,000, jumps, parachute jumps, she never once had to use her reserve chute. Her chutes, though, were always regularly inspected. Not once was a single minor fault or issue found, let alone something which could have led to a catastrophic failure. And if anybody knew how to deal with a parachute malfunction, her. Equally, if you wanted somebody to pack your chute, you'd call him the Vixter. On this occasion in particular, April 2015. Emil, hubby, had paid for and booked the Easter weekend jump. The couple had been going through a bit of a rough patch, and Victoria saw it as Emil offering an olive branch and thought that maybe they could use it, as a starting point to help rebuild their relationship. Spoiler alert though, Emil saw it as kind of like the reverse of that. The jump was originally supposed to take place on April 4th, which was a Saturday, but bad weather, it is England. So that pushed it to the following day. It was wet, it was windy, it was very, very cloudy. And so the next day, which was the Sunday, the weather was still pretty bad. So this time Vicky suggested, how about we do a hop and pop? What they call a hop and pop. A hop and pop, for those dummies out there who don't know about parachuting, it's rather than jump out at the usual 13,000 feet, you jump out at 3,000 feet. So it's like a bit of a difference there. So you jump out, and essentially you pull your parachute as soon as you're out the door. If you're jumping at 13,000 feet, you jump out and you free fall, maybe do some cool flips and shit. This time though, you're just out, gone. So they reached there, having a great time. They reached the appropriate altitude, and one at a time they hopped out of the side of the plane and popped the parachute. Smiles all around, the rush, the adrenaline was pumping. Then it was Vicky's turn, and with a huge smile on her face and zero fear, she jumped out of the aircraft. After only a handful of seconds in the air, falling at 120 miles per hour, 200 kilometers per hour, Vicky's heart fell even quicker, because she immediately noticed something was very, very wrong. What's going on here? Her parachute didn't deploy. She was free falling for a full minute with a broken parachute on her back. That was before she smashed into the ground. The others had seen her falling. They knew she should have deployed her parachute by now, and she hadn't. Those who had set off in the direction of Vicky's landing before she'd even hit the deck weren't going with a rescue operation in mind. As far as everyone was thinking at that very moment, it was a case of retrieving her body. They'd even taken a body bag with them. In their mind, they were thinking of an eerily similar case that had happened just 12 years earlier to a guy who also used to jump regularly at the same airfield. He had died during a jump, and it's hella rare to die during a parachute jump, so it's weird it would happen twice. 20-year-old Stephen Hilder, an experienced parachutist, died on July 4th, 2003 in Lincolnshire after his chute and reserve failed just like Vicky's had. His fall was considerably higher than Vicky's had been. he had fallen from the regular 13,000 feet. At first, Stephen Hilder's death was treated as suspicious, and a murder inquiry was launched. His chute had been 100% tampered with. A lot of the lines, snip, snip, snipperoo. Ultimately, though, after a 10-month investigation in which 3 people were charged, arrested, and then released, it was kind of ultimately determined that Stephen had done it to himself. The scissors used to cut the lines that was found in his car trunk, and only his DNA was found on the parachute. It's believed he was quite depressed at the time, so he thought, what a way to go. Hey, he loved parachuting, so not much better ways to go. However, the ruling on Stephen Hilder's death, it's still kind of questioned by some of his friends, other people involved are like, did he do it himself though? Did he though? So now it was on repeat when Vicky's parachute failed to deploy. Everyone was booking it to where she had landed, but Booty, to their absolute astonishment, she was still alive. Fortunately, Victoria had landed in a freshly ploughed field, which, coupled with the low altitude jump, likely saved her life. Don't get me wrong, she was in a very, very bad way. She had a broken spine, a pretty much pulverized pelvis, and several snapped ribs, but she was still breathing. A helicopter was quickly dispatched to get her to hospital. Naturally, everyone was shook. Nobody around her had seen anything like this before, especially when those around her who saw when her parachute was unfurled. A lot of the lines were knotted together, which, wouldn't happen naturally. It seemed pretty clear almost from the start that her parachute had been tampered with by a human.
That's just tangled up in the line, isn't it? I've never seen anything like that before.
But that can't have been there when she deployed.
No, it wasn't there when she deployed. I think that, I don't know.
The risers on the reserve chute were also severed. In fact, there was a number of issues with both her primary and reserve chute that led the investigators to think this was deliberate, as there was no signs of stress on the rigging, which would lead you to think it was natural or just wear and tear. The investigation into the almost tragedy began right there and then, where it had almost taken place. See, anybody could have accessed the parachutes before the jump, but they couldn't have accessed it without being seen, and several people said they saw Vicky's husband Emile get her parachute and go into the bathroom with it and be in there for 10 minutes with her chute. What's he doing in there? Are they out of toilet paper? I don't think so. When the decision was made to postpone the jump due to bad weather, Emile insisted on taking the rig with them rather than leaving it there at the base with the others, which was normal protocol. There was basically no reason to not leave the chute secured with the other parachutes. So if Emile had done it, why would he want to kill his wife in such a spectacular and horrific way? You probably have one of them good ideas already. There's a famous saying, there's only 2 reasons ever for murder, and we've seen a lot of murder on that chapter, and that's money and good old sex. Sexy money. In this case, it was both. Emile worked as a physical training instructor for the Royal Artillery, and himself and Victoria had been married for 4 years, having tied the knot in Emile's native South Africa in 2011. It's fair to say that, the relationship wasn't exactly healthy from the get-go. Pretty much right out the gate, Emile was having an affair with an Austrian skydiving instructor named Stephanie Goller. He had met Goller on good old Tinder when he was away skiing. Now, when the investigation began into the obvious tampering and the attempted murder, well, eyes went straight towards the husband. They always do. Emile knew the police would discover his affair, and so he was open about it with the police from Jump Street.
Tell me about your relationship with Victoria.
It's not a marriage that I would want to be in anymore. I can't see myself being in the marriage in 10-15 years time. I've got quite a high sex drive. My wife, Victoria, she's got a very low sex drive. We struggle to have sex more than twice a week. I met a girl, Stephanie. It was just a friendship to start with, and then it got a little bit more serious.
In fact, Emile had a few girls on the kind of poll, which is surprising. Emile was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, but he was eventually released on bail. He was released on bail with the stipulation that he absolutely have no contact with his wife Victoria while she was, recuperating in hospital. I mean, they believed he had tried to kill her. Victoria had a huge problem with that, because she openly was like, he didn't do it. He didn't do nothing. Victoria was standing by her man. Once the investigation, though, kicked into full gear and they got Emil's phones, the whole kind of kit and caboodle, well, the floodgates opened. Get this, folks, not only had Emil and Stephanie, his mistress, during a 6-month period exchanged tens of thousands of messages. 32,000 messages to be specific in 6 months. Who has time to send that many messages? Who has the time for this shit? It wasn't just the amount of messages, it was also the content. With Emil saying to Cilliers that he couldn't wait to be with her, even when he was, at Victoria's bedside while she was completely smashed up. He was still texting Stephanie saying he couldn't wait to be with her. And messages from before the parachuting accident. He had texted Stephanie saying, in April, I'll be free.
This is to Steph. From April onwards, I can do random and spontaneous. What was the significance about April in that context?
Random and spontaneous.
From
She
April
says,
onwards.
what's the big link in April? What had you promised her? Tell me.
I don't... That I would be... I don't know. You're probably going to tell
You
me.
would be what?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Where was the parachute when you got to the locker?
I can't remember.
Okay. And what did you do when you were at the locker?
I already answered that question before.
And you're not willing to go through it again?
No.
You went to get Victoria a parachute?
Yes.
Tell me about the checks you did.
It's just standard checks as you should do as a parachutist.
Okay, well tell me what those standard checks are. I don't know, I don't parachute.
Okay, I'm sure you can investigate and ask the right questions to the right people in regards to checking a parachute.
Okay, I'm asking you,
I
Emil,
can't remember.
because you obviously did the checks.
Yes. I would just do the standard checks.
What are those standard checks?
In addition to his full-blown affair with Stephanie Cilliers, Emil was also sleeping with his ex-wife, Carly, on a fairly regular basis. He was also constantly using adult work to search for local sex workers and fab swingers to look for local swingers. Busy man, bust a nut Emil, they called him. I mean, that's what I would call him. Kind of amazing he found all the time to sleep with his wife, his girlfriend, his ex-wife, and then of course all the women he found for hookups online. He had a job and a YouTube channel too, where he serenaded viewers with his musical skills. Now it makes sense how he got the chicks. A little something extra for the ladies were his work outfits. And he also uploaded COD videos. And all the while he was doing his thing, here's his kinky online advert featuring his chests, where he says he is a, quote, a very well-endowed male and I like to keep in shape and have a very athletic body. What a guy. Police also discovered that Emil, not only was he apparently, I guess, addicted to sex, just, always had to be fucking somebody, he also had a lot of debt. He was over 20 grand in the hole. Actual professional financial investigators couldn't even unravel the complicated web and come up with the real total, as Emil had been moving money between numerous accounts for several years, almost on a daily basis. No one knew the actual extent of his finances or his debt. It was just so convoluted. Emil owed money, not only in personal debts to his wife and family, but to also several payday lenders. You know, those like, money lenders, the predatory money lenders who were, that kind of shit. Those. He was mad for that. As always though, Victoria, she got the worst. He had taken from her about 19 grand. which he had no intention of paying back. Now, it's his wife, but he would just transfer money out of her account without her knowing. One time when Victoria logged into her bank account and saw she was missing £6,000, she was like, what's going on here? Who stole my money? And Emil said, you know, oh, you just try to gaslight her and say, oh, you've been hacked or something. When the bank investigated it, they found, well, it led straight to Emil. But then Emil just like love-bombed Victoria yet again after she realized he'd stolen his money and kind of got away with everything scot-free. He got away with a lot of things scot-free, actually, for a good long time. However, Victoria eventually had enough of suspicions around Emil, especially regarding money, that she eventually removed him from her will, so that all of her shit would go to her kids. It's about £120,000. Everything would go to the kids. I don't think Emil knew that he had been removed as the beneficiary, because if he did know that, he probably wouldn't have done what he done did. Or at least in not like such a convoluted way of finagling her parachute. You know, maybe it was something a lot more simple, subtle, accidental. Like a gas leak, perhaps. Boom, we got one. When the police visited Vicky during their investigation to once again try to persuade her about what a monster Emil actually was, they went through, you know, all the evidence they'd gathered from his phone. Told her everything about his multiple affairs with Stephanie, with his ex-wife, with sex workers, pretty much anything that had a pulse. All of his money issues, financial issues, all of the shit she didn't know. She was still standing behind him at this point. Couldn't imagine he would tamper my parachute? No. But it was during that conversation that she told the police something about like, you know, it's kind of weird because about a week before the parachute jump, something kind of strange had happened. She thought it was weird that one night Emil, he told her he wasn't going to come home, he was going to crash at the Royal Artillery Barracks, which he did regularly. He told her, you know, Vicky, I'm not coming home tonight. Now, in reality, of course, he was with one of the people he was having sex with. But he told her he was at the barracks. And then, you know, so Vicky was like, fine, whatever. She went to bed. Vicky then woke up the next morning and strong smell of gas in the house. She went down to check the valve, saw it was wide open and there was blood on the valve. She texted Emil about finding the gas leak and saying, are you trying to kill me? Emil did not joke like a normal person would. He got extremely defensive and said, no. The officers investigated. They found the blood was still on the gas valve in their home. They tested the blood. It was Emil's. It was obvious via inspection that somebody had broken it open, hence why his blood was on it, rather than it just being an accident. Emil was saying he had tightened it recently, but if it came loose, you know, maybe it was traffic. You know, they're doing construction down the road. Maybe, you know, a jackhammer broke it or something. Because they usually jackhammer in the middle of the night. My fucking construction workers do.
When was the last time you used your locking pliers?
Can't remember.
What was it for?
You just asked me when's the last time I used it, and now you're asking me what
did you
for.
use it for?
And when I said I can't remember when I last used them, how can I remember what I used them for?
You might not remember when you used them, you might remember what you
I
used
don't
them
know.
for. That's what I'm asking for. Okay. Totally, isn't it? This isn't the first interview. We're just trying to see if it was loose. You've told us today that you use mole grips, locking pliers,
Yeah.
On the nut.
Yeah.
We recovered a pair of mole grips from your toolbox locking pliers.
Okay.
There were no other similar tools.
Okay.
Okay. A forensic expert has stated in relation to the mole grips, which are exhibit NJB/5 /MH/26, the mole grips locking pliers, that conclusively the locking pliers were used to forcibly grip and loosen one of the nuts on the gas fitting.
Okay.
Help me understand how that is possible from your account about tightening the nuts.
I did say before I didn't know which way to turn it, and I tried both directions, which didn't budge them.
He says it loosened. Explain that.
I don't see how he could say it loosened it, because when the gas engineer was there, I assumed he loosened the whole thing and checked the seals and everything. I don't know what his procedure is.
Okay. The same forensic expert has provided evidence to state there is no indication that exhibit NJB5MH26, the same mole grips locking pliers, has been used to tighten either of the nuts on the gas fitting. So he's saying those pliers have not been used to tighten either of the nuts on the gas fitting.
Right.
Help me understand how that's possible from your account.
I don't know. If I turned it the wrong way, then.
You were quite certain. You said it didn't move.
Yes, it didn't.
And you said you tried to turn it both ways.
Yes, I did.
But yet there's no indication that they were used to try to tighten.
Okay,
Explain that.
I can't.
His second attempt to murder his wife Vicky is, it's actually more cruel and psychotic. Because even though it's a lot simpler than the convoluted parachute murder plot, the gas leak one was his kids were in the house, sleeping upstairs. So the gas could have killed them by just smothering them to death, or if somebody had lit a match. The house would have, not only Vicky would have been killed, his own kids would have been killed too, and he obviously didn't give a shit. Maybe he would have messed with his kids' parachutes if they had been there, who knows?
Emile Cilliers, seen here on the left, is accused of trying to murder his ex-wife so that he could be with his lover, something Mr. Cilliers denies. The court heard Victoria Cilliers was one of the UK's top parachutists, but prosecutors say her husband tried to kill her by tampering with her parachute. Mr. Cilliers is alleged to have sabotaged both his wife's main parachute and her reserve chute the day before the jump.
Despite Emile having 6 children to 3 women, and as a result a rather large extended family, when the case came to trial after a 2-year investigation, not one single person testified in his favour. He was so toxic nobody still had a good word to say about Emile. Speaking of all of his children, 2 of them were born in South Africa. That was to one of his first girlfriends, Nicoline Shepherd, who Cilliers met when the two were growing up in a Johannesburg township in South Africa. He was 17 when they met, she was 13. They had their first daughter when Nicoline was only 16 years of age, and after she gave birth via C-section, like 10 days, like less than a week after, Emile was already saying, listen, let's bust the Glock. They quickly had another kid before Emile abandoned her. He went to Britain on holiday and just decided he was going to stay there, because there he met Carly, who would be his first wife. He joined the British Army, never bothered to contact Nicoline or his 2 children back in South Africa. She found out through family that he had left her and was now living in a different country with a new woman. Amazingly, after Nicoline Shepherd herself moved to the UK a few years later, in 2004, the two ended up back in touch and began seeing each other once again. He claimed himself and Carly were over and in the middle of a divorce. That once again was of course a load of bollocks. Eventually, Emile's lies about his women caved in on him when he left his phone out and Carly rang. Nicoline answered and the 2 women had a very interesting conversation. They confronted Emile together and as always he blamed them, taking 0 responsibility. Then of course he left Carly and eventually wound up with Victoria, who wound up jumping out of an airplane with a broken parachute. Despite Nicoline cutting all contact, he would still message her from time to time saying, hey, you wanna what? You wanna Netflix and chill? While at the same time, he was still having sex with Carly after they divorced. He was married to Vicky and he was seeing escorts all the time. Actually, it's kind of impressive. Emile pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of attempted murder, one for the gas attempt, another for the parachute plot. The prosecution in fact had so much evidence from Emile's phone, it had taken police more than 9 months to actually go through it all.
These are the tangled remains of Victoria Cilliers' parachute rig. The court heard her husband had removed 2 vital pieces of equipment known as slinks, which fasten the parachute to the harness. This reconstruction, shown to the jury, showed how Mr. Cilliers took the parachute into a toilet at the airfield and tampered with it.
At the end of his trial, Emile was sentenced to 18 years to life in prison. After all of this, Victoria Cilliers, she wrote a book titled I Survived. She later went on a TV talk show to talk about the book and how almost writing this book was a form of therapy for her because she'd been through so much psychological and emotional abuse from Emile. He was like the ultimate love bomber, abusive, manipulative piece of shit. Thank you so much for watching, it really means the absolute world to me. Yeah, here, listen, hope you enjoyed the video, and that kind of wraps up this one. Please check out the That Chapter podcast if you're looking for something to listen to. It has a new episode out every single Monday, so give it a go. And also, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, so check that out. But until the next old video, which will be up in a couple of days, please take care of each other and yourselves, because I love you. like it.
Well, now they know.